there, it's James, and welcome back to another side quest, where either myself or Jesse does a quick, spoiler-free review of one of our solo books. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we have a $1 Patreon if you want to support our show. This also grants access to all episodes 2 days earlier than the public release. Links for Patreon, our email, and all social media are in the show notes. We post our episode release schedule at the top of our Facebook page in case you're looking to read along with us. Please feel free to send us an email with questions, comments, book recommendations, and more. So, The Shades of Magic Trilogy by V.E. Schwab. What an interesting read. It has very high points and has very low points. I should mention, Jesse and I both read the first book together and did a full main quest on it, which is where we break down the entire first book with all the spoilers. You should definitely check that out if you've already read this book, or if you're just curious about the details without having to read the book. I decided to continue the trilogy all the way through as I was a big fan of book 1. This is a story of parallel worlds, specifically parallel Londons in the 1800s. We have Red London, where magic is plentiful, the air in the world is tinged with red hues, and it smells of flowers. We have White London, where magic is scarce, people fight for the throne daily, where color seems to have drained and everything is white, everything is cold. We have Grey London, which is, quite simply, our London, our Earth. Regular, void of all magic. Finally, we have Black London. No one talks about Black London, where magic went too far and destroyed the world as we know it. Once upon a time, all worlds used to have gateways, and people could freely travel between the parallel worlds through these gateways. But those doors were sealed up in response to abuse of the magic. That was a time of legend, and now no one can travel between the worlds. Almost no one. You see, there are many people who can use magic, but there are only a select few who are born so powerful that they can still travel between the worlds. Magicians with this much power always have one fully black eye, which publicly marks their status, and these types of magicians are called Antari. Enter our main character, Kel. This series follows Kel, who doesn't know his real birth name or really anything about his life prior to his quote-unquote adoption, if you will. Kel was taken in by the royal family of Red London, raised as their second son. Their first son, Prince Rai, and Kel become brothers and best friends. Kel, as it so happens, turns out to be Antari. So the king and queen have an ulterior motive of raising Kel to be not only their son, but the guardian or protector of their real son, Rai. This is something that Kel will struggle with, figuring out his place in this family. In the meantime, as an adult now, he goes about his daily life. He acts as a royal messenger between worlds, and he has a bit of a business on the side. He trades in items across worlds, which is technically illegal to do. After getting in trouble for this, he vows to himself never to do it again. It was stupid anyway. One day, while delivering a message to White London, a stranger forces him to deliver a message to someone back in Red London, and with that message is an item which turns out to be a black stone, which is the catalyst of the rest of our story in Book 1. Along the way, we will meet Lila Bard, a common Grey London thief or pickpocket who picks Kel as her next target on a whim and gets herself involved in the story as our other main character. Between them, they have to prevent an extremely ancient magic and an extremely dangerous set of royal twins, the Dane twins, from taking over everything as we know it. This is truly a magical novel with a fun vibe and a quick pace. It's equal parts race against time, adventure, mystery, and action. I loved Kel from the beginning. I'm not saying he's the most in-depth character ever written, especially when we literally don't know his backstory due to his unknown past, but he has enough depth and internal struggle and learns enough about himself and where he feels he belongs along the way that there is definitely decent progression with him. Then we have Lila. Lila. I truly hated this character at first. She is impulsive. She does what she wants without thinking much about consequences. She's a troublemaker. But that is, of course, by design, and I learned to like, if not exactly love her by the end. There is also the royal family. This includes Rai, the king, and the queen. They get a lot more story in later volumes, but I think Rai sticks out to me the most of the three. He's the prince who will one day be king, but in the meantime can't help but have as much fun as possible along the way. Sex, bar hopping, general shenanigans. Certainly a character we've seen done before, but still fun to watch. I think he becomes a lot more interesting by the final novel, and probably one of my favorite characters towards the end. Then we also have Holland, who appears throughout the novel as our antagonist. He is the Antari from White London, basically Kel's opposite. And man, does he have a tragic past. Without giving away the really important parts, we learn that he is bound, by magic, to the evil king and queen of White London, the truly ruthless Dane twins. He can't help but do their bidding, bend to their will by force, even if it means killing people. He also hates Red London. How bountiful the magic is, how happy and well off they all seem to be, and yet his heritage, his fate, is tied to his White London home. So there's a lot of bitterness he has to work through. This book has a blood magic system, in which the Antari, such as Kell and Holland, have to use their blood in order to perform their big magic, basically. For example, if you want to travel from Red London to Grey London, you would need an object whose origin is from Grey London. It can be anything. Then, with the right magical phrase and a cut of the palm, you combine the two to open a doorway between worlds. Luckily, it turns out Antari are fast healers, so blood magic isn't as strenuous as it would be for you and me. How convenient. What I like about Book 1 is that it is very self-contained. You can read this fantastic story, get a complete ending, see where our characters go, and you never have to return to the series. And depending on who you are, that's exactly what you should do. Because, enter Book 2. I literally do not know what happened here. In Book 2, Red London is about to host what is essentially the Magical Olympics, a tournament held every 6 years. That sounds exciting. Here I am thinking it's going to play some crucial role or something is going to go wrong in some big, spectacular way. I'm thinking, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. But not only is every event in this tournament a bore to read, it's not even important. And the tournament doesn't even start until you're almost done with the book. So then you may ask yourself, well, what is the point of the novel then if not the tournament? All I can advise is ask the author, because I don't think anyone else really knows. We meet a few new characters that will play a bigger role in Book 3, and the last 15 pages definitely sets us up for the final novel. But this is about one of the most pointless books I've ever read. I thought maybe by the time I read Book 3, I would understand why Book 2 was so integral to being a part of this trilogy. I think the answer simply is introduce some of the larger world politics that play a role in the finale, introduce a bunch of characters and places to set up key scenes and ideas in the finale, and you're probably thinking, yeah, that seems pretty normal for a book. That's kind of how these things go. And you would be right, but this is a book. Therefore, it's kind of important that there is not only a story, but a story worth reading. Book 2 felt like it just didn't have either. We were just following a couple main characters around their daily lives until the book ended. And I could not wait for it to be over. The last 15 or 20 pages was where all the excitement built up so that we could jump right into Book 3 with a sort of head start. Finally, Book 3. I can't tell you fully what it's about, since it's the finale and basically all spoilers, but our final big bad comes into play. Red London and soon everything is in major trouble being taken over. There are some grand ideas here, your typical save the world type fantasy endings, and it's by far the most in-depth look at our characters and the larger world. So much more interesting to read. The stakes feel very real and very terrifying. No character feels safe and anything can and will happen. It's very exciting, but despite all of that, it's not as good as the very first book in the series. For me, Book 1 sits at 4 out of 5 stars, Book 2 is 2 out of 5, and Book 3 is 3 out of 5. Book 3 is still extremely enjoyable to read. The difference is Book 1, while having all those high stakes still, it still felt small scale and fun and magical. Book 3 just felt like retreading what they had to do in Book 1, but with way more characters, lots more drama, and surprises that honestly weren't that surprising to me. Although there are still some cool and exciting moments, I love the idea of a floating black market made up of multiple combined pirate ships that could be anywhere in the ocean, all sorts of illegal magical items. I love seeing Rise and Kell's progression as brothers, especially given their unique circumstance, of which you will initially discover during Book 1 that quite honestly always has you on the edge of your seat. But I will say no further on that topic. I think there are a few too many elements that are very coincidental that help them in their quest for victory. It's one of those moments where you just kind of think, wow, thank God these are the people that met each other at the exact moments they did. Otherwise, they'd be screwed. I know that's how stories kind of go. It's normal, but I think there are more natural ways of doing it other than what the author attempted here. Certain characters had such specific and helpful knowledge, or they would run into just the right person at just the right time. They could just conveniently do all the things they needed to do so quickly that it almost felt effortless on paper. Overall, I give the entire series a final review of 3 out of 5 stars. A fantastic first entry, a mind-bogglingly pointless and boring second entry, and an enjoyable finale that I certainly think is still worth your time. Please read the first book. It's a fantasy novel that deserves a place on your shelf. And from there, decide how invested you are to continue down the path through this trilogy. Also, check out the main quest with myself and Jesse for a full breakdown on book 1. That's all I've got for you today. Remember to check out the show notes for our Patreon and social media links, and review this podcast wherever you may be listening. I'm James, and this has been my side quest. Bye.